It's Talk Funny, a podcast by Mark Bailey and other comics from all over. We ended up in Japan because we wondered what part of Buddhism allows you to boil an octopus alive. So here in Asia, no fears of being reincarnated as an octopus, I guess. Just saying. The Talk Funny podcast from NagoyaRadio.com and Nagoya Comedy. Here's Mark Bailey.
Here's Mark Bailey.
Welcome back to Talk Funny. I'm Mark Bailey. We're here with C.P. Howard and Mike Miller. We were struggling a little bit with our chords, and we're part comedians, part broadcasters, part firemen. You take that hose and you throw it over there. That's what she said. That's what she said.
I thought you were going to say part suicidal.
Well, that's my act. We talk a lot on text, the Nagoya comedians and myself. And Steve sent us an article by Pat Oates. He's a struggling comic, and he has very strong opinions. We don't always agree. But here's an article that Steve sent us by Pat Oates, 3 things I wish comics would stop yelling at other comics about. So if you could summarize that, Steve.
So he was, I guess I wouldn't say it was a rant, but a complaint article, and he was talking about 3 things that kind of bother him. The first one was making new comics be the host or the MC, which he said really isn't fair because new comics should be focusing just on doing their act the best they can. And then the second one was using segues in your act, which personally, I kind of disagree with him a bit on that one. And then the last one was whether it's okay or not to use a notebook on stage, which he felt was perfectly fine. Again, especially if you're a new comic. So that's the summary of the article, I guess you'd say.
So take the first one. I guess that comes from, it doesn't happen to us because usually I MC, and I guess I'm the most experienced, and I just do it because it helps me get all the comedians on the train, so they don't miss their train, but also helps me control the show. It helps me most especially control the open mic guys who sometimes may go on forever. We had a guy who will get on and say, I know I promised to do 5 minutes. Can I do 6? He's negotiating on stage. And that is taking away from the comics. And we sold tickets to these people we promised to be funny, and they're never going to see us if they leave early. So the first one was, this is not a problem we deal with, making new people do emceeing and hosting.
No.
I guess that's something a venue does. But also, as an experienced comic, if someone is emceeing and I wasn't asked to MC, I might actually take umbrage with that. So I don't think that's really applicable to our situation. How about segues? What do you guys think about Mike and Steve?
Well, I was going to say about being the MC, maybe me and Mike, because we're a lot more green at it than you are. And it is being the MC and then also having to get up on stage and do your 10 minutes. It is a lot of extra work if you're not, in our cases, not being as experienced. It's not something that really comes natural. So I agree with him. Definitely that especially if you're a brand new comic, you shouldn't be up on stage as an MC.
That sounds like something a venue owner would make a comic do. I can't imagine an experienced comic would even accept, here's a brand new guy being an MC. MC is kind of like when I was in New York, the MC called in sick and I got promoted to MC. That's a promotion.
Right.
And you need to have some tact. You need to be funny because you have to give some jokes away in between your act. They can't be part of your 10, 15-minute act. And when you have a rowdy crowd, you have to be able to handle them.
Yeah, you need someone who knows how to read a crowd. And if it's a new comic, they're not going to be able to read the crowd, I don't think.
And I have a picture of Mike Miller the first and last time he ever emceed, which is at Shooters, and he just looked miserable because one of the comics attacked the headliner on stage violently on stage, and we had basketball players and we had musicians complaining. And I have one picture of Mike, near the window, and if I could just draw captions of the cartoons like, should I jump?
Yeah, I felt like jumping that night. That was horrible. Yeah. That was a horrible night.
But that's kind of a normal night. If you're an MC, you have to prepare for that, and you have to be ready for it. And I know some venue owners don't like it when I call out violent or people who are just heckling, but I have to put my foot down. As an MC, you have to put your foot down and say, sorry, we have rules here, and you're shouting out things to comics, and open mic is over. Maybe you should go up a mic next time. You need to be kind of like the friendly police officer.
It's not an improv show.
Yeah. And so what do you think about segues, Steve?
Well, I use them a lot just because of the way I write, because I come from a fiction writing background, and so I kind of structure my sets almost like a short story or an essay, and so I kind of feel like I need the segues there. And also, for me, they're kind of a good cue so I can remember where I'm at and where I'm going next. So I like them. personally, but I did kind of the point. One of the points he made was he said, if you cut out most of your segues, you might get an extra 35 or 45 seconds to perform. Which is maybe 2 or 3 extra jokes. So I agree with him on that. But right now, at least for me, I think I'm going to hold on to my segues.
Well, if you do stories, there's probably not a hierarchy for that. If you're doing stories, here's a story about me fishing, here's a story about my son. There's probably not a lot, but I do a lot of one-liners. So if I do a one-liner about shrimp, and then one about my wife, then one about my dog, and then another one about shrimp, it's like, why didn't he talk about shrimp at the same time, right? And so you need to, I don't know if it's called a segue, but you need to put your themes close together. So talk about family life, you can talk about your wife, and then you talk about your son, but you don't talk about your wife and then your job and then your son and then your hobby and then your son and then people are like, why didn't you mention that earlier? And what you want to do is make it a story so that the funniest part of that story, even if it's 5 one-liners, the funniest one-liners at the end. And so it may not be a segue every time. And I agree, I always try. We had a guy before who said, you seem to do, he was a comic, and he said, you seem to want to get like the laugh a lot. You seem to want to get like 4 to 5 laughs a minute. Yeah, what am I, a carpenter? I'm not up there to fix the pipes.
I didn't realize
I'm not a drummer. I'm not a drummer. I'm trying to get laughs. What the hell are we doing up here? He goes like, yeah, but you're always like premise, build up, punchline, premise, build up, punchline. Yeah. So to you, the punchline is kind of important. Yeah, as a comic, I would say the punchline is
You're not
important.
alt comedy enough. You gotta just get rid of the punchline. Just get rid of the punchline.
You're upsetting the social justice warriors.
Like my former comedy partner, Logan, he would actually challenge that. He would get up and just do premises. And he was high. He'd get up and do premises. He'd do about 5 of them. And then people in the audience go, why don't you end one of these? He said, I'm sorry. Is there a comic in the room? And he goes, and the
You ever
audience
been on an airplane?
Moving
right along.
Logan would say, I'm sorry, is there a comic in the room? And the audience would go, apparently not.
Oh.
Yeah. And so Logan would do, he'd get up and he'd go, you ever notice, like, when you're going out to buy pot, and your mom goes, like, where are you going? You can't say you're going out to buy pot. You know what I mean? Don't you hate that?
Oh, I
and
hate
then
that.
What? And then, no, I don't. Why is that funny? He said, well, I really hate that because I can't tell the truth. People are going like, why is that funny? And one time I'm like, Logan, why is that funny? And he's like, it's not funny. It's just irritating. Kind of like your act. And then people are like, they're going like, he's the new Andy Kaufman. He's brilliant. He's amazing. And by the end, it's like, he's just high. He doesn't know where he is.
I was going to say, were those all the people in the audience that were high that thought he was
The people that laugh were like, yeah, I hate that, right? That's the punchline for them. When you get on an airplane, right, Mike? Right?
I know.
That's my closer.
Yeah.
Those are the guys that spend 3 or 4 hours sitting on the couch laughing at Sesame Street all day.
There you go.
It's the same theme song every time. I told you it's going to be the same. Why is this on at night? This is usually on at 3
How come
p.m.
you still don't know how to get to Sesame Street? It's been 10 years. You should know how to get to Sesame Street by now, for Christ's sake.
It's like drunk people at bars later, and they're playing beer pong. Beer pong, it's like you throw the ping pong ball and it lands in the beer, and then you have to drink the beer. And people are like, oh, wow, he won. It's not that interesting. It's only interesting because you're drunk. It's really not that interesting.
Because you're drunk and you're looking for any excuse to clap your hands.
It's just ping pong balls that have been on the, bathroom floor, and now they're soaked in beer.
Now they're in your beer that you have to drink.
And that's amazing.
That
you won that. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
What a victory.
Yeah, so we're talking about segues. If you group your act appropriately, you don't need segues, but segues are actually not a detriment. I mean, I think I said in the thread that we did before, if you watch Chris Rock, and I do recommend this, and not just for black audiences, but Chris Rock knows what he's doing. And he may have been on it a couple of times more than us. I'm not sure.
Maybe a few more times.
I think he's a known name, right?
He knows his audience, and he knows that he has to keep repeating the premise. And I never did that in the States. But when I came here, I noticed these guys are drinking, they're talking, they have a low attention span. You have to keep recreating the premise. Canada is not Japan. Do the joke. Another reason Canada is not Japan. Do the joke.
Right.
Like I said, Canada is not Japan. And I went back to Brooklyn, and I did it this way with the millennials, and they're like, you already said that. I said, millennials are not, the greatest generation, World War II? Yeah, they're dead. Millennials are not the greatest generation.
Oh.
Here's an example. A guy walks in front of a millennial, breaks in line. Millennial is never going to have their Iwo Jima. They're just going to let you break in line. So that's one reason I like millennials. But millennials are not the greatest generation. The third time I said it, somebody goes, you've said it 3 times. Do you have ADD? No, but you do. That's why I did it. We get it. You hate millennials.
No, you should have said, you're not drunk enough.
Well, they said, you hate millennials. They said, show of hands, how many millennials have put 2 millennials through frickin' college? Me, twice, you, never. Millennials, not the greatest generation. I raised 2 of you. Oh, that's racist. No. Hey, how many people have put 2 biracial kids through college?
Racist?
Me, because millennial is racist, just like talking about Islam is racist. I'm sorry, what color is a Muslim? Is he black? Yes. Is he white? Yes. Is he Hispanic? Yes. Is he Asian? Yes. Is he a Uyghur? Yes. So it's not racism, right? So I want to end on a light note like that. All right. It's been Mark Bailey.
Yeah, well, kudos for bringing up the poor Uyghur people. Oppressed by the Chinese.
Uyghur, the champions. All right, so it's been Mark Bailey with Mike Miller and Stevie Howard. We'll be back soon. Thanks for listening to Talk Funny.